What happens when raw truth collides with polished spin live on the record in the halls of Congress? Well, America just got its answer. Picture this. Jasmine Crockett, the Texas congresswoman known for her unshakable fire, goes head-to-head with Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General and one-time Trump defense lawyer. Crockett not holding back, Bondi trying to keep her cool, but within minutes, the whole room feels the tension crackling like static electricity before a storm. And then it happens. Crockett drops the hammer, exposing Bondi point by point. The arguments Bondi thought would hold up shattered. The talking points she rehearsed torn apart in real time. And when the dust settled, Bondi didn't just lose the debate, she lost her composure. She walked out, humiliated, leaving the room stunned. Now here's the question for you. How does a woman as experienced and seasoned as Pam Bondi get dismantled so completely? And how does Jasmine Crockett, a rising but still relatively new voice in Congress, manage to flip the script so powerfully? That's the mystery we are about to unpack. Think about the last time you were in an argument, maybe at work, in class, or even around the dinner table. You came prepared, ready to make your point, only to find that the other person saw right through your defenses. Every line you threw out, they countered. Every fact you leaned on, they crushed. That sinking feeling. That's what Pam Bondi felt in front of cameras, colleagues, and the American public. Except she didn't just lose face in front of a few co-workers or family members. She lost it on a national stage. And here's the thing, Crockett didn't just win an argument. She did something much bigger. She exposed a deeper issue, one that's been simmering in American politics for years. The tension between performance politics and truth-telling politics. Pam Bondi has built a career on confidence and D-sharp courtroom presence. She knows how to command attention, how to frame a narrative, how to protect her side. But Jasmine Crockett didn't play by the usual rules. She didn't defer, didn't soften her blows, and didn't let Bondi's reputation intimidate her. Instead, Crockett turned the spotlight on Bondi's contradictions. And once the cracks started showing, there was no going back. For the audience, it wasn't just political theatre. It was a moment that made you sit up straighter, lean closer, and think, wow, she really just said that. But here's the thing, this clash wasn't just about two women in a hearing room. It was about something much bigger. It was about generational change. It was about the fight for accountability. It was about whether polished talking points can survive when they collide with raw, unfiltered truth. And by the end of this breakdown, you will see exactly why this moment matters, not just for Crockett or Bondi, not just for Democrats or Republicans, but for you, me, and everyone trying to navigate a world where spin and truth are constantly at war. Because here's the ultimate promise. When you understand what really happened in this clash, you will understand something deeper about power politics and how to hold your ground in any fight. So buckle up, because by the time we get to the end, you'll see why Pam Bondi didn't just walk out of that hearing humiliated. She walked out representing an old way of doing politics that may never recover. At first glance, you might think this was just another political squabble. Washington is full of them, right? Politicians spar headlines, flash social media lights up, and by the next week it's all forgotten. But not this time. The Crockett versus Bondi exchange struck a chord not just in the room, not just in Washington, but across the entire country. Why? Because it wasn't just about policy or procedure. It was about something much deeper, authenticity versus performance. Pam Bondi has always been known for her polished, media-ready presence. She's a veteran attorney, a seasoned political figure, and someone who defended some of the most controversial positions in modern American politics. She knows how to spin a narrative and project confidence. But Jasmine Crockett brought something Bondi wasn't ready for: unfiltered truth. Crockett didn't stick to polite sparring or carefully rehearsed lines. She went straight for the heart of the contradictions in Bondi's arguments and exposed them for everyone to see. That moment hit differently for viewers because it reflected something all of us deal with in everyday life. What happens when someone stops playing the performance game and starts speaking plain truth? Let's get real for a second. America is tired. Tired of spin, tired of double talk, tired of politicians who seem more interested in protecting power than protecting people. That's why Crockett's clash with Bondi resonated so strongly. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a symbolic showdown between the old guard and a new wave of leaders who refused to sugarcoat, downplay, or tiptoe around tough conversations. For the US audience, this clash mattered because it wasn't just their fight. It was our fight. It was about every time you've sat in a meeting and watched someone bluff their way through with confidence while ignoring the truth. It was about every time you've seen someone in power dodge accountability. And in that moment, watching Bondi storm out, a lot of Americans felt a rare satisfaction. Someone finally said what needed to be said. This breakdown isn't just a highlight reel. It's a roadmap to understanding why this moment mattered and how it connects to the bigger picture of American politics and daily life. Here's what we're going to cover. We'll dig into the mistakes and misconceptions that fueled this clash. What did Bondi miscalculate? Why did Crockett's approach throw her so off balance? We'll explore how this moment exposed a larger problem in US politics. Then we'll bust one of the biggest myths in political culture, that the most polished and rehearsed speaker always wins the argument. We'll see how Crockett flipped that myth on its head and why it shook people watching. Next, we'll look at how Americans can use Crockett's approach, unapologetic truth-telling, in their own lives. Whether you're at work, school, or even handling family conflicts, there are powerful lessons here. Then we'll flip the script and examine Bondi's strategy, because while she lost this battle, her style of preparation and confidence still carries lessons we can use if we know when and how to apply them. This is where we reveal the ultimate secret hidden in the clash, the one big lesson that most people missed while they were laughing at the memes or arguing in the comments. It's the key takeaway about power, truth, and how to win when it matters most. Finally, we'll recap everything, drive the lesson home, and challenge you, the viewer, to apply it in your own life. That's the journey ahead. Here's why you'll want to stay with this breakdown until the very last seconds. And because this isn't just about two politicians, it's about you. It's about the moments in your life when you've had to choose, do I play along and stay safe, or do I speak the truth and risk the fallout? It's about recognizing when performance works and when only raw honesty will do. By the end of this breakdown, you will not only understand why Crockett exposed Bondi so completely, but you shall also walk away with tools you can use in your own daily battles. Because whether you standing up to a boss, confronting a classmate, or navigating a heated family discussion, the Crockett versus Bondi moment has lessons that could make you stronger, sharper, and more effective. So, don't go anywhere. Because what started as a fiery clash in Congress is about to turn into one of the most important conversations about leadership, accountability, and truth in America today. Pam Bondi walked into Congress with confidence. After all, she's no stranger to the spotlight. She's argued cases, defended powerful figures, and faced hostile interviews. She thought she knew exactly how this was going to go. Another hearing, another chance to flex her courtroom polish, another opportunity to control the narrative. But here's the fatal miscalculation. Bondi assumed Jasmine Crockett would play by the same rules. Bondi thought Crockett would spar, politely follow the script, and ultimately defer to her experience. What she didn't see coming was Crockett's refusal to play the game at all. Crockett wasn't there to perform. She was there to expose. And that's exactly what she did. This wasn't just about Bondi underestimating one opponent. This was about a larger misconception that runs through American politics and American life. The belief that presentation is more powerful than truth. For decades, politicians, lawyers, and corporate leaders have relied on polish. Speak smoothly, look confident, stay calm, and you'll win the audience. But Crockett shattered that illusion. She proved that so. Me times raw, unfiltered truth delivered with passion and fire can cut deeper than any polished line. That's why this moment struck such a chord. It was more than one person embarrassing another. It was a reality check for everyone who thinks confidence alone is enough to cover up weak arguments. Let's bring this closer to home. Imagine you're at work. There's that one co-worker who always seems to win arguments in meetings, not because their ideas are better, but because they speak smoothly and project confidence. They say things like, "Well, in my experience," and suddenly everyone nods. even though their plan has holes big enough to drive a truck through. Now imagine someone finally calling them out, not rudely, not recklessly, but with facts, passion, and zero tolerance for nonsense. The room goes quiet. The confident co-worker starts stammering. And for once, truth wins. That's what happened with Crockett and Bondi. And for anyone who's ever felt overshadowed by someone who talks a good game, but can to back it up, this moment was deeply satisfying. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where someone's confidence overshadowed the truth, and you wished someone would finally call them out? Think about that for a second. Who was your Pam Bondi, and who was the Jasmine Crockett you wished would step in? Or maybe could that person be you? Drop your story in the comments, because if you've lived it, you know exactly why this clash mattered. Here, see how the problem unfolded in real time. Bondi came in armed with talking points. She tried to frame the hearing as a partisan attack, painting herself as the seasoned voice of reason. It's the same strategy she's used for years. Project Authority, lean on reputation and assume the audience will buy it. But Crockett didn't give her the space. She pressed Bondi on specifics. She highlighted contradictions. She asked the questions Bondi did, and he want to answer. And when Bondi tried to pivot back to her rehearsed lines, Crockett wouldn't let her. Over and over she cut through the spin until Bondi had nowhere left to hide. That is the problem right there. Bondi relied on style. Crockett relied on substance. And when the two clashed, style collapsed. Here's a funny twist. Years ago, during a televised debate, a famous politician was asked a tough question. Instead of answering, he smiled, chuckled, and said, "That's a great question," before dodging completely. The audience laughed. Commentators praised his poise. But behind the scenes, staff admitted he had no idea how to answer. His entire strategy was confidence as a shield, and it worked until months later someone exposed the truth he'd been dodging all along. That is exactly what happened to Bondi. Except this time, instead of months, it took minutes. The deeper problem here is cultural. America rewards confidence. From grade school presentations to corporate boardrooms, we retaught that if you sound like you know what you're talking about, people will believe you. And to an extent that is true. Presentation matters. But here's the danger: when confidence is used to hide weak arguments, it sets people up for failure the moment they meet someone who refuses to play along. That is why Bondi's humiliation felt so dramatic. She wasn't just losing an argument, she was losing the illusion of authority. So, what is the takeaway for us? It's simple, Don, to mistake polish for strength. Whether you're rewatching politics, making decisions at work, or navigating personal relationships, always ask what's underneath the presentation. Is there real truth here, or just a confident facade? Because if Crockett showed us anything, it's that truth, when wielded fearlessly, can cut through even the thickest armor of confidence. And that brings us to the next big piece of this breakdown. Because while we've identified the problem, the dangerous over-reliance on style over substance, there's another layer to uncover. There is a myth that's been baked into American culture for decades, one that Pam Bondi leaned on and Jasmine Crockett destroyed in a matter of minutes. It's the myth that the most polished speaker always wins. For decades, America has operated under a silent rule. The person who looks calm, polished, and articulate is the person we trust. Think about presidential debates. Think about courtroom dramas on TV. Think about the way news anchors deliver stories. The message is the same: presentation equals credibility. But Jasmine Crockett versus Pam Bondi just proved something shocking: that myth no longer holds up. In a world of instant fact checks, viral clips, and audiences hungry for authenticity, polish alone doesn't cut it. Bondi learned that the hard way. Once upon a time, this myth made sense. Picture the 1960 Nixon versus Kennedy debate. Those who listened on radio thought Nixon won, his arguments were solid. But those who watched on TV overwhelmingly thought Kennedy won because he looked calm, confident, and camera-ready. That debate set the tone for American politics. If you looked the part, you could win hearts and minds, even if your ideas were shaky. Pam Bondi built much of her career on that same principle. She knew how to project poise, how to smile through tough questions, how to turn every challenge into a soundbite. But here is the thing: Crockett wasn't playing in 1960. She was playing in 2023, and in today's world, audiences care less about polish and more about passion, honesty, and authenticity. When Bondi entered the hearing, she leaned hard on the myth. She kept her voice measured. She smiled when challenged. She tried to dismiss Crockett's fire as partisan noise. But it didn't work. Crockett wasn't interested in optics. She cut straight to substance. She challenged contradictions, asked questions Bondi couldn't answer, and made it clear she wasn't going to let performance take the place of truth. And the cameras caught everything. Instead of looking polished, Bondi looked cornered. Instead of calm authority, she looked evasive. By clinging to the old myth, she exposed just how outdated it really was. We've all seen this myth play out in our own lives. Maybe it's that person in class who always volunteers to present, not because they understand the material better, but because they are good at speaking confidently. Or maybe it's the boss who dominates meetings with polished corporate jargon, but whose decisions fall apart once tested in real-world conditions. For years, those people won simply because they looked the part. But more and more people are waking up. They were starting to see that style without substance isn't. To leadership, it is smoke and mirrors. So let me ask you, have you ever seen someone lose all credibility because their polish couldn't hide the cracks in their argument? Maybe it was a teacher, a co-worker, a politician, or even a friend. Drop it in the comments, because when you share those stories, it proves how widespread this myth really is. Here's a fun twist most people don't know. Some of the most polished public speakers in history, from actors to CEOs to politicians, actually rehearsed failures in private. They practiced dropping their notes. They rehearsed fake stumbles. Why? Because looking too perfect can actually backfire. Think about that. Entire industries have been built on the myth of polish, but even the most polished performers know they have to sprinkle in a little raw humanity to stay believable. Crockett didn't have to fake that. Her authenticity was real. Her fire was unfiltered. And that is why the moment worked. Here's the real lesson: audiences are craving authenticity. In a time when politicians rehearse every word, when influencers filter every post, when corporations spin every press release, people are hungry for something that feels real. That is what Crockett delivered. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't soften her tone. She didn't try to play nice. She said what millions were already thinking, and she said it directly to Bondi's face. That rawness broke through Bondi's polished exterior like a hammer through glass. If you zoom out, this clash wasn't just about Crockett and Bondi. It was about the shifting rules of persuasion in America. For years, the myth of polished power let the well-connected and well-rehearsed dominate. But today, those who speak with unfiltered honesty, even if it's messy, loud, or unconventional, are the ones winning attention and respect. And that shift matters for every part of American life. In politics, it means leaders can't just rely on appearances. In workplaces, it means real ideas matter more than jargon. In schools, it means students who speak with passion can stand out just as much as those who speak with polish. But here's the catch. If polish doesn't win anymore, what does? What's the secret to standing your ground when someone tries to outshine you with performance? That's where we go next. Because in Section 5, we're going to break down the first actionable solution, a step you can take from Crockett's playbook and apply directly to your own life. Whether you are facing challenges at work, in school, or even in personal relationships, this strategy can help you cut through the noise and stand firm in your truth. And once you see how it works, you'll never fall for the myth of polished power again. If you strip away all the drama, all the headlines, and all the political spin, one thing stands out crystal clear about the clash between Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi. Crockett didn't win by being louder. She won by being specific. That's the first solution we can take from her playbook. In a world where people try to talk over each other, dominate conversations, or bury arguments under polished jargon, Crockett cut through the noise by pinning Bondi down with specifics. She refused to let vague answers stand. She pressed until the truth came out. And that is a strategy anyone can use, whether you are in a congressional hearing or a heated family din. Here's the secret: specifics disarm spin. When someone tries to bluff their way through an argument with broad generalities, specifics are the anchor that hold them accountable. Crockett used this brilliantly. Instead of letting Bondi escape with polished talking points, she pinned her with direct questions. Where exactly did you get that information? Can you name one example? If that's true, why does the record show the opposite? Each question stripped away Bondi's ability to hide behind performance. Each demand for specificity made her polished exterior crumble. That SY by the end, Bondi wasn't storming out because of Crockett's volume. She stormed out because Crockett left her no wiggle room. Let's say you are in a staff meeting at work. Your manager rolls out a new policy that sounds impressive, but makes no sense in practice. They say something like, "This new system will increase efficiency across all teams and streamline productivity." Everyone nods politely except you. You raise your hand and ask, "Can you give an example of how this will work for our department, specifically?" Right now, we already handle reports manually, so how does this system reduce the time we spend? That one specific question does what Crockett did to Bondi. It cuts through the buzzwords. Suddenly, the manager can just hide behind polished language. They have to deliver substance. Or picture this in school. A classmate gives a presentation that's long on style but short on content. They say, "This solution will revolutionize the way we think about education." Sounds nice, right? But then you ask, can you give one specific way this solution will change homework or testing for students in our school district? Boom. Suddenly the fluff falls away. Specifics demand accountability. Or this works in relationships too. Maybe a friend or partner says, "I always listen to you." But instead of just nodding, you gently ask, "Can you give me an example of a time recently when you listened to me and it made a difference?" It's not confrontational, it is clarifying. And it shifts the conversation from vague promises to real action. Here's why this strategy is so effective. Specifics force clarity. Vague language gives people an escape route. Specifics close the exits. Specifics reveal truth. If someone's argument is weak, specifics expose it instantly. Specifics shift power. When you control the specifics, you control the narrative. That's why Crockett left Bondi so flustered. Bondi was ready for a debate about optics. She wasn't ready for a demand for receipts. Now I want to ask you, when's the last time you wished you had pressed for specifics at work, in school, or in your personal life? Think about that moment. Would the outcome have been different if you'd asked just one clarifying question? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your story might inspire someone else to hold their ground next time. Here is something most people don't realize. According to research in negotiation psychology, asking for specifics doesn't just clarify. It actually increases your perceived credibility. Studies show that when people challenge vague claims with precise questions, they are seen as more competent, confident, and trustworthy. Think about that. By simply asking, "Can you give an example you don't just reveal the truth?" you elevate yourself in the eyes of everyone watching. That is exactly what happened to Crockett. She didn't just expose Bondi, she boosted her own reputation in the process. So how do you put this into practice in your daily life? Here's a simple 3-step formula. Listen for vagueness. Anytime you hear someone say, "always, never," everyone knows, or "this will work," your ears should perk up. Those are red flags. Ask for an example. Calmly and directly ask, "Can you give me one example?" or "Where exactly did you get that information?" Stay grounded. Don't let their deflection throw you off. Stick with the question until you get a real answer, or their lack of one becomes obvious. What Crockett did wasn't just about winning an argument with Bondi. It was about showing a new model of power in action, one where truth beats spin, where substance beats style, and where everyday people can hold even the most polished figures accountable by pressing for specifics. And that is something you can carry with you everywhere, at work, at school, in your relationships, and even in the way you evaluate politicians and public figures. But Crockett didn't stop there. If specifics were her scalpel, she had another tool that cut even deeper: the power of emotional storytelling. Because while facts corner people, stories connect people. And the second big secret Jasmine Crockett brought to the clash with Pam Bondi was that facts don't win arguments, stories do. Yes, Crockett pressed with specifics. Yes, she demanded receipts, but she didn't stop there. She layered her arguments with stories, real emotional lived experiences that made the audience feel what she was saying, and that see why her words didn't just corner Bondi, they resonated beyond the hearing room. At one point in the clash, Crockett shifted from pressing Bondi with direct questions to painting a bigger picture, why the issue mattered for everyday Americans. She didn't just talk about policies or procedures. She talked about people, real families, real communities, real struggles. And suddenly the debate wasn't just about who looked more polished. It was about who understood the stakes. That is where Bondi collapsed. Because while Bondi stuck to talking points, Crockett spoke from the heart. She reminded the audience that politics isn't just theatre, it is life. And that emotional storytelling stripped Bondi of her authority faster than any fact-check ever could. Think about when you were in school. Remember those teachers who lectured with nothing but numbers, rules, and dates? Sure, they might have been accurate, but they were boring. Now compare that to the teachers who told stories. The ones who explained history through the lives of real people, or math through funny examples you could actually picture. Who do you still remember today? The storytellers. That's exactly what Crockett did. And it's exactly why Bondi, despite her polish, couldn't keep the audience on her side. This applies at work too. Let's say you're pitching a new project. You could say, our new software will increase productivity by 27%. That's fine. But what if you said this instead? Last week, Sarah from accounting stayed late 3 nights in a row, trying to reconcile reports by hand. With this software, she could be gone home to her kids hours earlier. That's what a 27% increase in productivity really means. Which one hits harder? The story. Always the story. When politicians talk in percentages, people tune out. But when they tell the story of one farmer, one teacher, or one parent struggling to get by, people lean in. That is what Crockett nailed, and it is why Bondi's talking points, no matter how polished, sounded hollow by comparison. Now let me ask you, when was the last time a story changed your mind about something? It could be a book, a movie, a speech, or even something a friend told you. Think about that moment. Did the story stick longer than the numbers would have? Drop your answer in the comments because chances are your story proves this principle better than any statistic ever could. Here's something wild. Neuroscience studies show that when we hear facts, only the language processing parts of our brain light up. But when we hear stories, multiple regions activate, including those tied to emotions, empathy, and even motor responses. In other words, stories literally rewire the brain. They don't just inform us, they make us feel, imagine, and remember. That's why Crockett's storytelling landed, and that's why Bondi's polished performance evaporated into thin air. So how do you take Crockett's playbook and apply it in your own life? Here's a practical hack. Frame the stakes with a story. Instead of diving straight into facts, start with a human example. Who is affected? What does it feel like? Use specifics, not generalities. Don't say people are struggling. Say, a mum in Detroit is choosing between paying rent and buying groceries this week. Tie the story to your point. Don't let the story stand alone. After you share it, connect it directly to your argument. That's why this policy matters. That is why we need change. Do this, and suddenly your words aren't just heard, they're felt. The tragedy for Bondi is that she had stories she could have used. She could have grounded her arguments in real experiences, real people, real stakes. But instead she clung to Polish. She thought sounding confident would be enough. Crockett knew better. She knew the audience both in the room and at home wanted authenticity. And by choosing stories over spin, she connected with something deeper. That's why when Bondi stormed out, Crockett wasn't just the winner of a clash. She was the voice people remembered. And here's where it gets powerful. Because if specifics are your anchor, and stories are your amplifier. There's one final ingredient that Crockett used, one that turned this clash from a strong performance into a defining moment. It's not just about what you say. It's about the courage to say it even when the room doesn't want to hear it. That's the golden nugget, the ultimate secret we'll unlock in Section 7. Get ready, because once you see it, you'll understand why Crockett isn't just a fighter, she's a symbol of a new kind of politics. If we boil this whole clash down to its essence, here is the golden nugget. The most powerful voice in any room isn't the loudest, the most polished, or even the most experienced. It's the one with the courage to speak truth when everyone else stays comfortable. That is what Jasmine Crockett embodied. She didn't defer to Bondi's resume. She didn't soften her words for the sake of civility. She didn't let the weight of the moment silence her. She leaned into courage, and that's why she broke through. Pam Bondi had comfort on her side. She had years of practice in delivering polished lines, smiling through challenges and spinning narratives. She relied on the comfort of old political playbooks, the assumption that if you look calm, you win. But Crockett had courage. She risked looking too aggressive. She risked being labelled unprofessional. She risked backlash from colleagues and critics. And she didn't care, because courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to take the hit in service of the truth. That is the golden nugget. When you choose courage over comfort, you shift the balance of power. Think about the workplace. It's comfortable to stay quiet in a meeting when you know the boss's plan won't work. It is safe to nod along, even if you see the flaws. But what happens when someone has the courage to speak up? Sure, it is risky, but that courage can save the whole team from wasted time, wasted money, and bad decisions. And 9 times out of 10, even if people grumble at first, they respect the person who had the guts to say what everyone else was thinking. That is Crockett in Congress. Or think about relationships. It is comfortable to avoid tough conversations with friends or partners. It's easy to let little resentment slide. But when you finally find the courage to say, "This matters to me, and I need us to talk about it," that's when real growth happens. Courage cracks open doors that comfort keeps locked. The reason Crockett's clash with Bondi went viral isn't just because one woman won an argument. It's because millions of Americans are tired of polished comfort and hungry for courageous truth. We're reliving in a time when people are questioning institutions, demanding accountability, and refusing to accept spin. Crockett tapped directly into that energy. She showed that courage isn't moans. To messy, it's magnetic. And it's exactly what America needs more of. Here's what you need to hear. You don't have to be in Congress to live this golden nugget. Every time you ask a tough question at work, every time you stand up for a friend, every time you refuse to let someone's spin go unchallenged, you are channeling that same courage. You don't need Bondi's polish. You need Crockett's fire. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember who looked comfortable. They remember who had the courage to speak the truth. So here's the takeaway. Facts matter. Stories matter. But above all, courage is what makes them powerful. That is the golden nugget Jasmine Crockett revealed when she exposed Pam Bondi. And it's the lesson we can all carry into our own lives, no matter where we are or what battles we face. Let's rewind for a moment and trace how we got here. We started with the Ultra Hook setting the stage for one of the most jaw-dropping congressional clashes in recent memory. Jasmine Crockett exposing Pam Bondi, leaving her storming out, humiliated. We laid out the roadmap and context, showing why this wasn't a just political theater, but a mirror of deeper cultural shifts in America, from who gets to define authority to how truth breaks through spin. Then in Section 3, we identified the problem: Bondi's fatal miscalculation. She relied on Polish, assuming it would shield her, but Crockett shattered that misconception by refusing to play along. In Section 4, we busted the myth that has dominated American politics for decades, the myth that Polish always beats passion, that performance always trumps authenticity. Crockett proved that no longer true. From there, we turned the moment into practical lessons. Solution number 1 showed us the power of specificity, how asking for real examples disarms vague spin, whether in Congress, at work, or in relationships. Solution number 2 revealed the magic of storytelling, how emotional, relatable narratives connect with people on a level no statistic ever could. Then we hit the heart of it all in Section 7, the golden nugget. The ultimate lesson was simple but profound: courage beats comfort. Crockett won not because she was louder, but because she was braver. And that brings us here to you, the audience, and what this all means in your own life. This clash wasn't just Crockett versus Bondi. It was about all of us. It was about how we navigate truth in a world drowning in spin. It was about how we stand up when it's easier to stay quiet. It was about how we remember that courage, not polish, is what defines real leadership. And here, as the part that matters most, you have the power to use these lessons every single day. At work, when someone hides behind buzzwords, ask for specifics. At school, when a classmate overpowers with style, tell a story that grounds your truth. At home, when comfort tempts you to stay silent, choose courage instead. That's how you take Crockett's playbook and make it your own. So here's the challenge. The next time you in a room where spin is flying, where polish tries to drown out passion, remember this moment. Remember Jasmine Crockett standing her ground. Remember Pam Bondi storming out defeated by truth. And remember that you don't need a title, a spotlight, or a polished script to do the same. All you need is courage. Because courage is contagious. Courage changes rooms. And courage, more than anything else, is what moves this country forward. Now it's your turn. What did you think of this clash? Was Crockett too harsh or exactly what America needed to see? Have you ever had a Bondi moment in your life where someone's polish crumbled in the face of truth, or a Crockett moment where you were the one who stood up with courage? Drop your stories in the comments because your voice matters here. And if you felt this breakdown gave you something to think about, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments shaping our future. Because one thing's for sure, this clash wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning, and together we were going to keep unpacking what it means to speak truth, live courageously, and hold power accountable.